Hello and welcome to another edition of the Stench of Truth. Window Cat is here. I don't know whether she'll be in the window or not. We shall see. Anyway, I wanted to comment on a few things. First of all, Jared Lee Loughner, the crazy dude who shot up Gabrielle Giffords and others in Tucson, apparently after being tinkered with by the head doctors, is now fit to enter a plea and has pled guilty. Now that particular case still has some unanswered questions and some controversy surrounding it in the alternative community for sure, and even beyond that by some, I'm sure. So, but in this particular case, at least, you know, the pleading of guilty again is another instance where they successfully keep things from going through the court system in whatever fashion that they can, especially in instances where there are questions about things that might have a way of making it out into the public domain by way of a trial. So if a particular shooter does not end up dead, they often will plead guilty and avoid a trial, and that way you never actually get to see the facts. Of course, we have now a, I'm sure people are referring to as a copycat event with the supposed white supremacist, also referred to by three names in the media, and I think they do this on purpose. Probably no one ever called him by all three names, but they do this on purpose. And it's a way, it's a signal of indicating that this guy is a killer. The man who shot several people and murdered several people in the Sikh Temple. Now, of course, I have not had any time to examine this case in any great detail. I do know that there are allegations that multiple people were seen engaged in that activity, and that there may have been other shooters involved. And of course, the police have neatly wrapped it up by this one guy who apparently is a white supremacist. It seems kind of odd that he would, you know, go after Sikhs. I mean, considering, I don't know. I have to look into it further. I don't rule anything out in that case either. The white supremacist angle could just be a way of trying to target the militia and right-wing types in this country for greater surveillance and scrutiny, and that may be part of the charade, if there is one. It could just be that this guy is a complete fucking nut job, and that's also entirely possible. So until I look further into that case, I really can't say anything more other than they're trying to lay all the blame on him, and I don't see any backstory here aside from the ties to white supremacy that give us any inclination as to, you know, what his particular motivation would have been in this crime. Now, I want to talk about another issue which I think is something I should have been talking about a long time ago, and that's the stop and frisk policy that they have in New York. And this is basically a policy that the police adopt, and they can basically stop anybody and frisk them. But what it ends up being is a targeted action against minorities. And the police have arrested a huge amount of people for various and sundry supposed crimes after stopping them and frisking them, and this in some way is being justified by Mayor Bloomberg and the police in New York. Now, I'll get to Bloomberg in a minute. But this is a classic case of racial profiling, and it is just another injustice to be put upon blacks and Latinos primarily, although, you know, they do stop whites, I guess, just to make it look good as well. And there's sort of a catch-22 in this whole thing as well, you understand. I know for a fact, and I'm not sure if it's in New York, I think it is, but carrying marijuana on your person is not a crime, but having it displayed in public is. And I know that there are some instances where the police have demanded that people empty their pockets, and they'll have a joint or something in their pocket. And when they do, then it becomes a punishable offense, and it's a catch-22. You have to obey the police, and then you are violating your own right to not incriminate yourself. So this is a tangled mess of garbage, and it's a direct violation of the Fourth Amendment, and others in the Constitution, actually, to be, to have respect for your person and things. There's absolutely no probable cause to just stop somebody who's walking on the street, or on a sidewalk somewhere. And again, I'm going to make a plea to police, because I know that not all police are bad, but you do hear all of these stories about the excesses of police, that you have to understand that you are going to be fucking replaced. Your job is going to be gone. You're not going to have your pension. You're not going to have your job. You're not going to be able to do it anymore. And you know where you're going to be, Mr. Policeman, Mr. Tough Guy? Do you know where you'll be? You're going to be out on the motherfucking street with everybody else. And do you want to be in the same crowd with people that you busted the head of, or sprayed pepper spray in their eyes for doing nothing but being engaged in lawful protesting? Or maybe you manned an LRAD device and fucking shattered the eardrums of some of these people that you're going to be out on the street for. You seem to think that by ingratiating yourself to the powers that be and knuckling under to this complete blasphemy and this totally egregious action against law-abiding people and people who are doing, it doesn't even matter if they're law-abiding, people who are doing absolutely nothing wrong at the time that you become engaged with them. And what do we have in the news? Again, another incident of the same kind, where there was a tragic killing, where a black man was in custody, handcuffed, in the back of a fucking police car, shot in the head. Now the police say that there's no way he could have been shot outside the vehicle. And supposedly they have some kind of video footage. I don't know if they video the inside of the cars too. I don't know. But none of this stuff is released. And the authorities are saying that the police did nothing wrong. Now, what fucking conclusion can you come to? I'm fucking handcuffed in the back of a motherfucking police car, and I end up shot in the fucking head? Was I frisked before I was arrested? You better goddamn believe I was. There's no way I'm concealing a fucking gun and getting into the back of a police car. And how the fuck am I going to shoot myself in my own fucking head with my hands handcuffed? So, yeah, the police are investigating the fucking police. Again, a plea to the police. Realize that your jobs are over at some point. You're going to be subcontracted out just like every other motherfucker in this goddamn country. I wouldn't be surprised if there will be native Chinese doing your motherfucking job for $2 a fucking hour. And you'll be out of work and out on the streets with those people that you are busting heads and shooting and spraying pepper spray and everything else. So you might want to think about your future in that regard. This stop and frisk policy in New York is absolutely over the top and completely just, it's so viscerally wrong in every way. And yet it is just churning forward, and other states want to adopt it. Now, I want to talk about Mayor Bloomberg because he's a perfect example of the kind of thing that we can expect in elected officials in the future. That is people who rule by fiat, just like ancient monarchs used to do. Okay? They say something is so, and it is so, because your word is law. And because he's part of the elite, being a billionaire himself and having an elected office, he kind of crosses that nexus point there, where elected officials meet the actual owners of the world. And he's right there at that point. So what Bloomberg is, and everything that he does in New York, is an absolute blueprint for what you can expect the next group of supposedly elected officials to represent in this country. That's what you're going to have. You're going to have a guy who just rules by fiat like he does, and who enacts ridiculous and egregious laws, and who has secret liaison departments with the fucking CIA and FBI and everything else to bust up Occupy and all this other kind of shit that he does behind the scenes secretly with absolutely no justification or mandate to do so, because he's ruling by fiat. And this is an example of how we are going to move back to that entire feudal state, where you're going to have an absolute ruler wherever you live, whether it's your mayor, your governor, whatever kind of system ends up happening after the economic collapse. You're going to have an absolute ruler that rules by fiat. And that's exactly where we're headed. Imagine an entire country filled with nothing but Mayor Bloombergs deciding everything by fiat, just because they think it's the right thing to do. You can't have the big sodas, you can't have this, you can't have that. You know, and remember, this is the same New York that has a transfer tax on the books for all stock trading. It's on the books. It's there. It's law. This is the same New York that has that law that every year rebates all of those taxes back to those banks and financial institutions that do trades in New York every year. And he will, at the same time that he hands that fucking rebate check back, he will tell you he cannot afford to support the poorest and the weakest in the population. That's exactly the model for your future leaders right there. Chances are they'll just be heads of corporations that, quote unquote, donate their time to become public officials so that they can rule by fiat over a vast amount of people and territory. Everything is a fucking mess. It really is. And it's really hard to find a silver lining sometimes. And I don't have a silver lining for you today. Everything is fucked up and bad. People are being murdered by the police, by other people. The whole country is just, it's on tenterhooks. So I would just like to abjure you to try and focus on the positive things in your life and continue to do those things that bring your family and your communities together to try and solve problems that you can solve locally. And that's really the only thing I can tell you to do right now that will give you some direction and some guidance there. Because really, you know, good news is in short supply these days. I'm sorry to say. Thank you. Good night.